They say time heals all wounds. It's a beautiful lie. Time doesn't heal. Time corrupts. It oxidizes iron, rots wood, and fragments memory. It's been a year, or maybe 10. It's hard to tell. The clocks here in the house work, the hands turn, but I feel that the interval between the seconds isn't constant. Sometimes a minute lasts an hour. Sometimes a week goes by while I blink my eyes. I am still here, in the colorful house, the watchman of the abyss. My right arm, that piece of dead charcoal hanging from my shoulder, is my calendar. It no longer pulses. It doesn't glow. It's just dead weight, cold, wrapped in dirty bandages that I change out of habit, not hygiene. The skin around the scar on my shoulder has turned gray. The necrosis stopped, but the mark remained. I am a man carrying his own grave on his shoulder. Life here has become a maintenance routine, not of the house, but of reality. I wake up. I check the fence. I check the orchard. I check if the sky is still there. This morning, the system glitched. I was on the porch, drinking coffee, a watery coffee that tastes like hot water and sawdust, looking at the rain. It had been raining for 3 days straight, but something was wrong. I focused my eyes on a puddle near the gate. The drops were falling, drip, drip, drip. But they were falling in the exact same spot, to the exact millimeter. And the ripple in the water, it was identical, always the same pattern, a perfect circle, followed by 2 smaller ones. I closed my eyes and counted. 1, 2, 3, drip. 1, 2, 3, drip. I opened my eyes. The rain wasn't falling. It was on a loop. Someone or something down below or up above was saving on processing power. Why render a chaotic, complex storm for an audience of 1? A repeated audio and video file was enough to fool the carbon monkey. What a sloppy job, I muttered, tossing the rest of the coffee onto the grass. The grass didn't absorb the liquid immediately. The coffee sat on top of the leaves for a second, like a mercury bead, before physics remembered to work, and it trickled down. I laughed, a dry laugh devoid of humor. I walked to the orchard, to the old bergamot tree. Underneath it, the earth was packed hard. Nothing grew there, not a weed, not moss. That was Lucas's grave. The black cubes I buried. Sometimes I can hear them vibrating, as if he were down there, compressed, zipped, trying to unpack his own soul. The graphics are bad today, cousin, I said to the dirt. The frame rate is dropping. I think they are diverting power to another server. The wind blew. The leaves of the tree shifted, but they didn't make the sound of leaves. They made the sound of crumpled paper. Crish, crish. I went back inside. The house felt smaller. The rooms seemed to have shrunk overnight, or maybe I was expanding. I went into the kitchen. The soot stain on the wall, my grandmother's shadow, was fading. That terrified me more than any tall man. If the mark disappeared, the proof that she existed would disappear too. I grabbed a piece of charcoal from the cold stove and with my left hand tried to reinforce the outline of the shadow. I tried to draw her memory back onto the wall. But the charcoal didn't scratch. The wall was too smooth, impermeable, like plastic. No, I whispered, pressing the charcoal until it snapped. Don't you dare erase the texture. That's when I heard it. It wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from below, from the void under the house. It wasn't the tap dancing. That percussive sound had died along with the Silver City. This was new. It was a scratching sound. Slow, biological rhythm, like a large animal trying to sharpen its claws on the support beams, or someone trying to dig up. I froze. My dead arm weighed 10 tons. I grabbed the machete I always kept sharp on the table. Not that steel would do any good against what lives here, but the weight of the weapon in my hand gave me an illusion of control. I walked to the back door. The scratching stopped. Silence. That synthetic silence, where you hear the hum of electricity in the walls. "Who's there?" I asked. My voice didn't tremble. I was no longer afraid of dying. I was afraid that death was just another system update. Nothing. I walked down the porch steps. The mud sucked at my boots. I bent to look into the void, that labyrinth of darkness between the floor of the house and the red earth. It was too dark. The shadows there seemed solid, stacked blocks of darkness. I turned on the flashlight. The beam of yellow light cut through the gloom. I swept the space. I saw the brick pillars. I saw ancient cobwebs covered in gray dust. I saw an old tire that had been there since my childhood. And then I saw the anomaly. On the central pillar, the one directly beneath the kitchen, something was growing. It wasn't a tall man. It wasn't a machine. It was a pod, a cocoon, an oval mass, the size of a human torso, glued to the bricks. It was the color of bruised flesh, purple, yellow, black, and it was pulsing, not with light, but with movement. Something was shifting inside. I moved closer, the machete trembling in my left hand. The smell coming from it was horrific. It wasn't ozone. It was yeast, the smell of spoiled bread and copper. I aimed the light on the surface of the pod. It was translucent. And inside, in it, curled in a fetal position, I saw a face. It wasn't my face. It wasn't a clone. It was a face I hadn't seen in 20 years. A face that should be old, but was preserved in the eternal youth of trauma. It was the neighbor's face, the one who spoke to my cousin on the day of the game, the one who made the sign of the cross and ran, the first to realize the devil had arrived. He was naked, his skin pale as wax, his eyes open and milky, staring into the beam of my flashlight. But the worst part wasn't him being there. The worst part was what was connected to him. Cables, thin, black, organic wires coming out of his mouth, his ears, his eyes, and burrowing into the bricks of the pillar. He wasn't just trapped, he was hardwired into the house. "Mr. Antonis?" I whispered, the name returning to my mind like a recovered file from the trash bin. The milky eyes inside the cocoon rolled. They saw me. His mouth opened, stretching the membrane of the pod. No sound came out, just a bubble of dark slime. But in my head, in the receiver my brain had become, I heard it. "The backup is corrupted, Leandro. They are recycling the trash." Backing away in horror, I tripped and fell sitting in the mud. The flashlight illuminated the ceiling of the void, the floorboards of the house from below.
And I saw it. It wasn't just Mr. Antonis. There were other pods, smaller ones, hidden in the corners, behind the beams. Dozens of them, bubbles of flesh and memory, hanging like sleeping bats. The house wasn't empty. The house was a storage unit. Mother hadn't deleted the people of the region. She had saved them, stockpiled them for spare parts. I stood up, covered in mud, feeling nausea churn my stomach. I needed to burn that. I needed to burn the whole house down, now. I ran to the shed for the gasoline, but when I reached the corner of the house, I stopped. The sound of an engine, a real sound, a combustion engine.
The rain stopped. It didn't stop like normal rain stops, fading into a drizzle. It stopped falling. The drops hung suspended in the air, tiny spheres of liquid crystal floating all around us, capturing the gray afternoon light in thousands of distorted reflections. The system had noticed the intruder. The processor was choking. "Get in the car," Marta said, without looking at the gravitational anomaly. She was focused on the orchard floor, where the packed dirt hid my cousin's secret. "No," I replied, squeezing the machete until my knuckles turned white. "You're not going anywhere with that tape. Where did you get it?" She turned to me. The lenses of her glasses were wet, but the eyes behind them were surgical steel. "I didn't get it, Leandro. I intercepted it." She pointed to the static sky. "You think the dome isolates everything? The isolation is magnetic, not sonic. Low-frequency radio waves leak through the edges of the simulation. I've spent the last 10 years with antennas pointed at this valley, listening to the white noise, and last night the noise started talking." I looked at my dead arm. The charcoal was vibrating. It wasn't a pulse of life. It was a sympathetic resonance. The arm knew the owner of the voice was near. "He's under the bergamot tree," I said, and the sentence came out like a confession to a crime. Marta didn't hesitate. She went to the Beetle's trunk and pulled out a military folding shovel. "Then let's dig before the firewall realizes what we're doing." We walked to the orchard. The air was heavy, electric. Walking through the suspended raindrops was like pushing through a curtain of freezing beads. The static in the environment made the hairs on my left arm stand up. I pointed to the spot. The earth there was darker, as if the blood of the data had leaked out. Marta drove the shovel into the ground. The sound wasn't metal against dirt. It was metal against static. Zzzt. "The soil is encrypted," she muttered, forcing the blade. "The density is wrong." I kneeled in the mud. I dropped the machete. I used the only tool I knew would work. I used my dead hand. I struck the earth with the charcoal claw. The hard crust shattered like tempered glass. I shoved my motionless, numb fingers into the hole and pulled. The earth came out in geometric blocks, not grains. And there they were, the cubes. They weren't dirty. The dirt didn't stick to them. They were dozens of black, smooth, perfect dice, shining with an oiliness that repelled nature. As soon as the daylight touched them, they started to emit a sound, a hum. Hum. It was the same sound I heard in my dream, the sound of Lucas's voice when he was dismantled. "Magnificent," Marta whispered, crouching down and picking up one of the cubes with metal tweezers she pulled from her pocket. solid-state quantum storage. They didn't compress his body, Leandro. They compressed his topology. "What does that mean?" I asked, feeling a phantom pain in the shoulder where the dead arm connected. "It means he's not a dead file. He's a puzzle, and the pieces are calling to each other." She put the cube on the ground, near the others. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The cubes started sliding in the mud, by themselves, as if they had industrial-strength internal magnets. They collided, clack, 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 and fused. They didn't form a random pile. They were assembling themselves. A structure began to rise from the orchard floor. It didn't look human. It looked like a fraction tower, an obsidian totem shifting shape every second. Sometimes it looked like a hand, sometimes a screaming face, sometimes just a geometric error. And the voice coming from that pile of cubes didn't come from a mouth. It came from the vibration of the air around it. "Bearer, Sector 7, Leandro. The house isn't wood. The house is the server." I backed away, horrified. Was that Lucas? That cold, mathematical thing? "Lucas," I called out. The cube structure stopped moving. A flat obsidian face turned towards me. There were no eyes, but I felt the gaze, the same gaze I felt in the Silver City. "Cousin, the rain stopped. They are resetting." Suddenly, the world turned red. Not the sky, the ground. The grass around us instantly changed color, from moss green to a blaring alert red. The raindrops suspended in the air evaporated into crimson smoke. A siren sound, not a human siren, but a deep, distorted digital alarm began to emanate from the house. "Damn it," Marta yelled, frantically gathering the cubes and throwing them into a lead-lined box she had brought. "The house," I pointed at the stilted structure. The brick pillars were shaken, and from the void, from that darkness beneath the floorboards, the pods were hatching. I saw Mr. Antones, the neighbor, rip the purple membrane of the cocoon. He fell into the mud on all fours, but he didn't stand up like a man. He stood up with his limbs twisted, his joints bent the wrong way. He opened his mouth, and what came out was pure static. And behind him, others, the spare parts, badly made copies, rough drafts of people that the Taquara Ridge had swallowed. They had no intelligence in their eyes. They only had one directive: clear the error. They started running towards us. They ran on all fours, like human spiders, too fast, too silent. "To the car, now!" Marta screamed, running for the Beetle with the lead box. I couldn't move. I looked at those things, those people, and I saw guilt. They were my neighbors. They were my history. "Leandro!" Lucas yelled from inside the lead box, his voice muffled. "Move your carcass!" My dead cousin's command broke my paralysis. I spun on my heels and ran. The first recycled leaped on my back. I felt cold, sharp nails tear my jacket. He weighed as much as a stone. I twisted my body and used my charcoal arm as a club. I hit the creature's head. There was no sound of breaking bone. There was the sound of shattering ceramics. Mr. Antones' head exploded into gray dust and blue light. "They're hollow!" I screamed, running for the car. "They're just textures." I jumped into the passenger seat of the Beetle. Marta already had the engine running. The roar of the air-cooled motor was the most real thing in that nightmare. The horde of recycled slammed against the car. Pale hands pounded on the windshield. Faceless, noseless faces pressed against the windshield. Marta shifted into first gear and floored it. The wheels spun in the red mud, spraying dirt everywhere. "Hold on tight," she yelled. The car lurched forward, running over two of the creatures. I heard the sound of crunching metal and breaking glass under the tires. We sped down the dirt road hill like a runaway missile. In the rearview mirror, I saw the colorful house. It was changing. The wooden planks were unfolding, growing, stretching. The house was standing up. The brick pillars became legs. The kitchen window became a cyclopean eye, glowing with a yellow searchlight. The house wasn't a storage unit. The house was the guardian, and it was coming after us. "Marta, faster!" I screamed, seeing the colossal silhouette of the monster house stand out against the gray sky. "I'm trying," she replied, fighting the steering wheel. "But the road, look at the road!" I looked ahead. The dirt road didn't lead to the village anymore. 100 meters ahead, the road simply ended. There was no abyss. There was no wall. There was the end of the render. A smooth, infinite white wall that cut the world in half. The trees, the grass, the sky, everything ended abruptly at that white wall. It was the edge of the map. "Where are we going?" I screamed. "We're going through," she yelled, her eyes locked on the white wall. "The Beetle's analog. No chips, no electronic injection. The system can't hack the engine because it's pure mechanics. If we have enough speed, we'll punch through the texture barrier." It was suicide or madness, but looking back at the house walking on brick